Yeah.
First time he says, Dad.
Jody.
Yes.
All right, let's call today's Port Commission meeting Tuesday, February the 18th. It's 8:04. Let's call it to order.
About 10:04.
We got public out there, comments, somebody wanting to do something?
We have Matt online, but I don't have any other public.
All right. I noticed since Ms. Traylor is not here, did she reach out to you?
She reached out to Mrs. Weaver, yes.
Yes, she will.
Okay, she will not be here. All right, let's go to the consent agenda, agenda item 1 and 2. And that's the meeting and the minutes of January the 23rd and the Harbor Master's report of January the 2025.
I move the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion to accept the minutes as presented, seconded by Mr. Butler. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays, no nays, motion approved. Go on to agenda item 3, and that's receive the financial reports on the Port Revenue Fund, tariff accounting, payment, revenue expenditures, balance sheet, profit and loss. Ms. Brittany, welcome. Yes, ma'am.
So with the tariff reports, everything is up to date.
Bo, have you asked Stevens why his revenue is down?
No, I haven't.
Somebody ought to just ask him, has he moved his business elsewhere? Oh,
There's no telling. He's very hard to get a hold of.
Who's that?
the golf bar.
Oh,
All the delivery is about half what it was last
yeah.
year. And I would have thought it'd been, the business ought to have been good, I would have thought.
Yeah.
So I'm just asking, see if there's anything going on that we need to know about, that's all.
I'll call that Paul.
Yeah, I just asked him, man.
He actually would golf more. He's pretty easy to get a hold of. He's a pretty good.
Yeah, it didn't have to be Stevens by any means.
It's a noticeable shrinkage on Heller Chemicals on the rail spur.
Yeah.
Haven't they been doing a lot of work on the railroad?
Waiting for our revenue and grants or whatever to help.
87.
Let's look at the account agent report.
I will let you know that Mayfair did make a payment today with the late fee. So you will see that in February's meeting, the payment was made.
Home run from last time is starting to shrink. I noticed a couple of people on the balance side.
Mhm.
So we have no overdues at all, Brittany?
Nope.
I'm gonna tell you what, you need to get a star.
Starting, but it's starting.
If you ever did it, I'm sure you enjoy it.
It's starting to show. Let's keep an eye on it. Anything of note on the payment report?
No, just normal expenses. I know we're doing a lot of nautical landing expenses, so you'll see on the payment report, there are more expenses than revenue, but we are doing a lot of contracted services over there.
What's going on with Felipe and
I was just getting ready to ask Jim, I noticed this contract services for 5,000 on the on page 37. How are we doing? You know, you'll report to us later on that?
Yeah.
All right, our refuge.
South storefront door, which one is that? I mean,
That was the south end of the nautical landing building.
okay. Was the old door just,
Oh, yeah, it was a double, just old wood.
that's the one on the, actually, it's on the end of the building.
the parking lot?
Yeah, it looked like they're walking into the
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so what we did is, it was just an old wood double door.
Uh-huh.
And what we did is we took the brick out above, there's kind of a cement beam up there, so we took that brick completely out, so there's a sky, a light above the two doors. It made it look a lot nicer.
Okay.
Put an air buffer in there for air conditioning.
Matter of fact, y'all had asked a question about that here a meeting or two ago because of the barefoot charges. And so Mark had to take the door out, kind of put it back, take the door out, cut the brick, and then kind of close it all back in. And then Mitchell came and installed the door. Then Mark had to come back and trim the door back out. And that's what that was all about.
All right.
The revenue and expenditure report, anything else, Jay?
Nothing of note, we're on track. At January, the goal should be 33% of the fiscal year. And we're just a little short on revenue, but we're good on expenses.
Percentage wise, we're looking good, so. Move on to the balance sheet.
We need to move some money into projects.
I wouldn't quite do that yet. As you'll notice on the snapshot on your balances, the debt service funds are in the negatives right now because we just made a bond payment in January. And so we then took from Port Commission to transfer over to that debt service. So, but you won't see that until February's report. So I would prefer to see what the balance is as of February before transferring any over to Logic, just to make sure.
Well, balance is looking good. Now we just need to have the project begin so we can start using up some of the encumbered money. Look, move on to the Port Commission snapshot.
And like I said, you will see in Nautical Landings that there is a loss of 1,084. But that is due to the expenses from the storefront door and all the contracted services we have been doing.
This is our new collection payment
So that is
tracking system.
the AR customer, that would be the accounts receivable system. For the billing zone at the top, that would be coming for the marina. Everything else that says AR customer is for everything else.
We asked for detail on
I'm sorry,
we had asked for detail.
I remember that.
So that's what we're doing. That's, again, good information. Just to kind of get your mind. So you notice anything that's wrong or out of
Well, it's
order.
not getting down to the weeds, but it's giving us the information we need to stay current. Questions or comments? Thank you so much, Ms. Brittany. Move on to the city manager's report.
Okay, I'll run through these pretty quick. First, the Texas Park and Wildlife Grant. The renovations to non-landings and breakwater, the city council, at the meeting on February 10th, did award the contract to Derrick Construction for $435,160. So we're working on getting the contract signed and scheduling a pre-construction conference. If the Port Commission would like to select a member of the Port Commission to attend pre-construction conference as a representative of the Port Commission, just let me know and I'll make sure that I'll have that person involved. On the CBD Mid Coastal Resiliency Living Shoreline Project, there really is no new update right now. Restore, our consultant Kim Griffin did report that the nationwide permit application was ready for submittal, but she was waiting on one last piece of information from the Corps before having us sign the document and ready to submit. So this submittal was taking longer than originally thought, so that will translate into delay in when they authorize it as well. CDBG met round 2 application for use of funds to replace the culverts under the rail of the corporation ditch and the voluntary restoration at the refuge, Harbor Refuge shoreline. There's really no new information on that. We are still waiting on GLO. The GLO Kepler Grant Project, the Harbor Refuge Shoreline Protection Preliminary Engineering work. I've attached in your packet a copy of the final alternative analysis report. Raymond did review that with, it was online when we reviewed that with Mont McDonald. Alternative 4A has been the one selected, which is page 30 of the report, but in your packet, it's page 92. This is a breakwater configuration along the Harbor Peninsula and southern shoreline consisting of 6 shingled sedimentary rubble mound, breakwaters, providing fish gaps with an extended gap protection overlap. Shingle orientation is to protect against the largest waves, which will come from the southeast direction. Matterport Bay Mitigation Grant, Downtown Waterfront Public Access Improvement Project. We've received a nationwide permit for the bulkhead, but we're still waiting on the permit for the docks. I know Matt's online, but I haven't seen any more movement on the other permit. As far as the TxDOT truck route signs, I have reached out again to TxDOT for an update. When the pre-construction conference is scheduled, it has not been scheduled yet. And they're trying to tie that down themselves, and they will let me know as soon as they have a date, and I will pass that on to y'all.
Jody, one question on the Restore grant. Have we received previous Restore grant funds in the past?
No,
We had an issue with the Railroad Commission that we gave them almost $1 million of a grant we got in Jackson County. The Railroad Commission, after reviewing all the requirements for record keeping and response back and forth, they declined the grant.
we're not working with the Railroad Commission, we're working with TC.
I know it's TCEQ and their requirements when you get a Restore grant
I
fund.
know, it's a pain.
Okay, I was just wondering if you had looked at that.
We haven't heard anything from the Railroad Commission, and we're working
You won't.
Yeah, we're working very closely with TCQ to go through this process.
Okay.
Using the
Yeah.
guidance, yeah.
That was the issue. The requirements to receive a Restore grant were pretty onerous regarding reporting,
I agree.
record keeping and all of that, to the point that the Railroad Commission turned the grant down. So I just wanted to bring that
No,
up.
I mean, it is. I mean, we've been working on this since,
Yeah.
2017.
Is
Very tedious.
this Restore grant going to interfere with our living shoreline though?
We hope not.
I was concerned about that because they're both in the same area.
Well, the bottom line, the Restore grant needs to be done before the shoreline project.
But I don't
It's
want,
not as big of a deal now that we are not constructing a marsh in that area. So it still could happen after the fact, but we really don't want that. We don't want to deal with that. Right now, we are still on target to be getting the Restore complete before we're ready to do the overall. But if that changes, I mean, the coastal resiliency master plan is going to take precedent.
I would have Matt reach out. So that we make sure that we're not going to run over one another and delay that multi-million-dollar project behind.
Well, Matt doesn't have anything to do with that.
Small grant.
Matt doesn't have anything to do with that project. That's, Kim Griffin is our consultant on that one.
So this is Kim and Mott McDonald then?
Yes, Mont McDonald.
I would have them check that so we don't.
I mean,
Yeah.
we talk about that every meeting, yes.
And while we're at it, I noticed that we're giving Derek Construction the project for the breakwater. He might be interested if we can get things accelerated to remove those.
Oh, sure. I mean, I will
Right up his alley.
accelerate any way I can. I don't have permission to bid it yet. I mean, as I understand it, there's some environmental reporting that needs to be submitted with this nationwide.
Yeah,
And then you have to wait 90 days. After that, then we should be able to bid.
can you ask Derek if he would have interest in doing that?
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure that's one of the contractors we'll be looking at. Yeah.
Okay,
It
great.
would be a huge mobilization issue.
Yeah, boy. It should reduce his bid significantly.
I mean,
Okay.
thank you, Jody.
And if you got any questions on that, I'll analysis. They call or And then try our.
Let's move on to agenda item 5, receive Harbor Master's Operation Promotion Development Activity Report. City Harbor Nautical Landings Building, Nautical Landings Marina, Smith Harbor and Harbor Refuge. Jim?
Yeah.
We're gonna listen to, Lance.
I'm sorry, sir.
Lance Rodriguez is here with Formosa.
Certainly, certainly, we
Give
can,
us an update on the,
we'll pass on that agenda item.
no, it's in this.
It's
agenda
gonna be,
item. It's in this agenda item. As part of Jim's report on the Horizon, he's gonna give a report as part of Jim's report.
right?
So, yeah, I'll go ahead and share my screen.
All right,
Good morning. How's it
good
going?
morning. Introduce yourself, please.
My name is Lance Rodriguez. I work for Formosa Plastics. I'm part of the environmental department.
Welcome, Lance.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Finally.
All right.
Yeah, I'm looking at things to make it up here now. This one?
Yes, ma'am.
Icons I'm used to. Okay.
So basically today, been asked to come and speak on some of the daily activities that are going on in the marina, Harbor Refuge, a little bit of Lighthouse Beach as well. So if you want to. So Horizon Environmental, they're a contractor of Formosa's. So what they do Monday through Thursday is they'll go out to, like I said, the Bayfront Marina, and they'll look for plastics, whether it's powder, pellets, and they'll pick them, right? They'll pick them up, they pick up debris. They're gonna use, like I said, hand picking, rakes, shovels, dip nets for powder, if it's found. And then once it's collected, then we, at Formosa, we dispose of them. So a lot of times there'll be debris, that gets pushed up into these rack lines, and they're also collecting that as well. If you have any questions, please, at any time, please ask. So for the bay remediation, we have a remediation consultant, Friesen Nichols, or F&I for short. And so at the marina, they had identified BRA, which stands for Bay Remediation Area, number 74. And the numbers are a little wonky. There is not necessarily in order, if you will. But 74, that's part of the interim phase 1, that consists of land that is owned by the city, county, and state, including submerged lands. And then also Formosa property. So pellets last found and collected were during the 03 of 24 cycle. So this right here, what happens is, and this is just so I can show you kind of a visual of what goes on. This is on Cox Creek, but it's the same methodology. So what happens is they'll put out 100-foot transit line, and then the little blue squares, those are 1x1 squares. So as they put those out, they go to the rack line, they drop the transit line. It's already marked in 10-foot sections or increments. And that's where those squares are placed. If 10 or more are found, or the threshold is 10. If 10 are found in the very first square, right?
10 pellets?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Then they have to continue to clean that entire area, and then that transit line is moved another 100 feet. And it could go on again, but it's usually about 2 passes, and then that's where we get to zero plastics. And so anything that's found, like I said, if it's powder, dip nets are used. If it's actual physical pellets, then, they get handpicked and then disposed of. So the Bayfront Marina, that's number 74. And these are these grids, if you will, these squares, they're half a mile or quarter mile, I'm sorry, quarter mile in length. So you don't mind if I kind of move around a little bit? So Horizon's gonna come up to about this area, and they're gonna work their way up. With the marina, we have identified some hotspots that we have Horizon check daily, like I said. So these spots are gonna be the boat ramp, right here in this little corner across from the boat slips. And then right here in this corner by Poor Boy Bait Shop. And like I said, the guys, I think they do a really good job of going out there checking. I monitor them as much as possible. And then, so at the boat ramp especially, we have found, I hate to move it on you guys. At the boat ramp, yes, we have found some most plastics, but we have also found colored plastics. Purple, blue, black. Once it doesn't make those colored plastics, I just want to make that clear. Yes, we're cleaning up plastics, but it can be from anybody at that point.
Where is all this stuff coming from, Lance?
So I would say that the Formosa plastics, they could be circulated in the bay, right? Southeasterly wind is going to push those into these collection points or hotspots, as I call it. We have our diffuser, and plastic is coming out of that diffuser, but it's in very small quantities. We have put so many resources and time, money, trying different filters, what can we get to best prevent these plastics from coming out?
When you say filters, where are those filters trying to trap materials? At Cox's Creek? How about the bay?
The bay, yes, sir. Yeah, so they're gonna be within like our wastewater plant and also the individual units. Now, this is where, for me, I almost feel like I'm speaking a little bit out of turn because I'm just one piece in all the moving pieces, right?
Yep.
So I couldn't get into the weeds with this particular filter is used at this unit and at this point in the process. That, unfortunately, I can't give you that info. But I can just tell you what I know, what I'm seeing. My main job is basically oversight of remediation work on Cox Creek in the Lavaca Bay bay system.
Yeah.
On a historical basis, Lance, do you have anything, year, 2 years, 5 years, which you can track back and see if we're collecting less, more, same?
Yes, sir. So we have been, thank goodness, I think it's the last 2 years, we have been zero plastics within the BRAs. And there's, I think, 181 BRAs? And so these are all individual spots. Now, granted, we only have access to 33. Like I said, this is the interim plan so far. This is kind of, how do you say, low-hanging fruit, right? That we know we can get right off the bat. Once you start going into like phase 2, now we're talking about private property owners, right? And of course, we're gonna have to get the access granted by the individual property owner. So that's why it's not the complete 181 BRAs.
So what I'm sensing here is that we're finding pellets on like I would call it the southwest side of the bay relative to Formosa. And we're finding all kinds of pellets and things there, but we're not quite sure exactly where they're coming from. If we drew a circle around Formosa, we're not sure exactly where they may be coming from, or even if they are Formosas.
So yeah, it would be a mixture of both. Yes, we know that the diffuser, that would be west, kind of in the middle of the bay.
Is that the 01 outfall?
Yes, sir. So that would be, if they're coming from Formosa, it's gonna be.
And pellets coming from there, you think?
But it's more powder than anything.
Yes.
And we're talking nanoplastics.
Right.
It's, it looks like, for lack of a better word, like baby powder. almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mike Rivette's told us several times that the powder issue, which is maybe largely coming from the 0-1 outfall, that is really tough to trap.
Yes, sir.
And there's almost no technology out there that will completely get rid of that.
Yes, sir.
On the other hand, those pellets certainly are within existing technology to be able to trap and stop, I would think.
Correct. So I know that we had a really good, it was about a 16-month window where zero plastics were being found at one of our filters. And of course, everybody's ecstatic. Now we're trying different, like I said, as far as trying different methods, seeing, hey, is this type of ceramic filter, is it better than just your regular old ultrafiltration system? So there's some moving parts. And like I said, I can't go into super detail into this because I personally don't know those functions, right? It's not something I deal with on a daily basis or even at all.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So we've got the nanoplastics issue, which we're dealing with new technologies and trying to figure out ways that we can get to the zero release, which is very rare if ever done. And then we have over here these big, huge pellets that are coming from who knows where.
Correct.
But that's not a technology issue relative to trapping it.
Correct. And I've seen some studies online where these pellets, and I'm not saying all of them, but they could be coming from Louisiana, Houston, and they just kind of travel along the Gulf.
Wow.
They can be from anywhere, really.
Yeah.
Your opinion is it's not from Cox's Creek
No, sir.
today. No pellets are being released today.
I personally don't believe it. You would have to have a serious rain event. And maybe pellets that hadn't been cleaned yet would get washed over that dam.
Yeah.
And then they would go into Cox's Bay, if you will. But no, I personally, I don't think so.
Is there a water release pipeline that bypasses that dam back there?
I think there is, but I want to say it's further. Is it further north? Like I'm talking at the.
I just heard that there was a drain pipe, if you will, that has a valve on it, and it would be inside the dam.
I haven't seen.
Creek.
Yeah, I haven't seen one.
I haven't seen it either. I just.
Yes, sir. And I've been pretty far up Cox's Creek.
I go back to, excuse me, I go back to page 2 of your presentation. The second sentence there, when plastics are found. When you get to talking about nanoplastics, you've got a Herculean task ahead of you in that from what I understand, Formosa has stopped the outflow of any plastic. And this is stuff that may have been out there, and again, maybe not from Formosa, but other places. Is there a way to identify that? It's like the mercury that is in the bay. This stuff may wash up from 1 foot, 2 foot under when we get a serious tide. So how do you just go out and look for it to see you're a treasure hunt, try to find something?
That's basically what it is.
Wow.
Thank goodness we've kind of we've gotten smarter, right? We know, okay, we need to look at these rack lines. Okay, maybe there's 3 separate rack lines. Don't just look at the first. Hey guys, look at the second, look at the third. You know what? We see a rack line pushed 20 feet up. Okay, guys, now you know. Go look at this rack line, and that's just kind of trial and error. You start getting better, you start learning, okay, maybe in some of these areas, there's some shrubs or something. It's kind of push back a little bit. Don't uproot them, don't hurt them by any means, but start looking. Yeah, it's definitely a treasure hunt. I'll tell you what, I didn't think when I took this position, I didn't think I was going to get good. My superpower would become finding pellets. I really did, but it has.
And the bottom line is, you don't have anything to say about it, but the company is operating under a consent decree to do this type of work
Yes, sir.
with the whoever.
Yes,
And it's expensive in all ways,
yes, sir.
so it's not gonna go away.
No, no. And like I said, the efforts, we know that we have a pretty big hill to climb, but we're taking on that challenge, trying to be good, environmental stewards and
Continue, page 6.
okay, so the port, that's another area that F and I was given access to. So there's 12 BRAs. Okay, we have 17, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 31, 32, 33, 34, and 35. So pellets hadn't been found since March of 23. And that's like, and so at BRA 17, there was 25 total pellets collected. So these numbers, they're relatively low. It takes about 22,000 pellets, single pellets, to make 1 pound. So we're not talking about these, giant numbers. They're low. They're low. And like I said, it just goes to the work that Formosa's putting out there, the work that Horizon, who's dedicated, and they want to make a difference. They want to be part of the solution. So it's good, but I'm glad that I'm able to kind of show the quantity, right? So 17, y'all can't see it. It's going to be up here. Like I said, I apologize for having to move around. I should have brought a point. We have 17 up here. And like I said, all these purple, those have been looked through. These down here, they have not yet. Those are part of a different phase.
What's the indication of the different colorations? You have green and purple?
Yeah, you have phase 1 and phase 2, yes, sir. And actually, I'm sorry, those have been. If you look, there's a square to the left of 17, like that one we don't have access there. And above 31 and 35, we don't have that access.
And can you just sum up what you found in these areas?
Yes, sir. So 17 would have been the only area out of those that had the actual pellets.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
It's weird. It's almost looks like this stuff is coming from somewhere else.
That's what I was just thinking. Somebody drove up there, swept out the back of their truck or something.
Yeah.
Because of where it's at. It's in the work area of our harbor refuge.
Now, is this our harbor refuge or is this the port?
That's what it is.
That's the.
Yeah, this is the port.
Yeah.
So moving on to the harbor refuge, F and I has identified 5 BRAs, 81, 82, 84, and 86. Pellets hadn't been collected there since the 09 of 23, September. And it's 83 and 84, and combined, they both combined for 33 pellets.
That's the harbor refuge,
Yes,
basically.
sir. Yes, sir.
Wow.
And so you can kind of see 83, 84, they're right next to each other. East and west.
Yeah.
Jimbo, the ones that we are seeing the most of on our side is where?
The marina.
The marina.
Typically, in Smith Harbor,
Okay.
right back in that corner there along that little shoreline.
Right there where you got the water outlets coming off the road.
And then on the other side in the marina, right there as well. But typically, most of it, I think, is coming out of Smith Harbor. That's where I see them working a lot, is right in that general area.
That's all I got for you.
Before you leave, I just have to say this.
Yes, sir.
Formosa's taken a hell of a publicity lick over all of this. And it looks to me like they may not be the source of what we're seeing. The powder stuff, they're doing the best they can to recover that, but that's not a real big issue, I wouldn't think. it's when the pellets start showing up, that gets attention. And there are ways to stop that, but if it's not coming from Formosa, what do we do? The first thing is probably to make that observation public.
Right, yes, sir.
It's not, it's coming from somewhere, but it ain't Formosa.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned Formosa. Mr. Jack Wu is in the back. Would you like to address the commission and speak on this issue, sir?
Well, and a couple things, like he mentioned, he found the palette with different colors, black, green, yellow, red. And in Point Comfort, we only make clear plastics. So that means majority of that palette is come from somewhere else, not from Formosa Point Comfort side. That's the evidence by color. And the other thing is kind of relief for general public is 1 pound, just 1 pound. It contains 22,000 pellets, just 1 pound. And you compare to bottle, cups, trash can, liner in the bay, it will be more than the amount. And the good indication is during this cleanup cycle, the cleanup team only find 23, 36 pellets in the area. So from the environmental impact, it's pretty minimal. And the other thing is, of course, the pellet itself is just a pellet. It's not really toxic or dangerous to, because we use every day, our cups, our tube go to save our life. They are made of same material. So that's different, we try to protect in general. I think it indicates we are the company do as possible we can, even though obvious some is not from Formosa. But as a public, the community, the city, the county, we all concerned of the big environment. So we'll continue to monitor this effort, make sure we do the right thing to protect our environment. That's my short comment.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Go back to agenda item 5. Jim, go ahead. Thank you so much. If I didn't say that,
Yeah, Lance, thank you.
both of y'all, thank you.
Thank you, Lance.
Thank you.
Okay, City Harbor. I left that on there because we haven't, it's been on there since the last meeting, and I haven't got anything done with that. That was the washout line, the bulkhead there. Slip 1 and 2, CH slip 1 and 2. I'm gonna talk to Gonzalez and see, I know they're pretty busy at the moment. And if he's not gonna have time to do it, I'll probably turn that over to Barefoot and let them work on that, so. The Nautical Landings Building, Barefoot they're working on the storm covers. That's kind of a fill-in kind of job for them, actually. They're probably about 2/3 of the way completed with that project. They're still, he's actually been kind of working with Derek Smith, trying to come up with a scope on the 6 big windows. So we gotta put something together because we have to bid that project. It's gonna run over $5,000. The water usage, it appears that the water usage for the building, it appears we're okay. I've been watching that real close. We haven't seen anything out of the normal, as far as usage wise. So I'm hoping we're okay now. They fixed the leak at the meter. So we'll just continue to monitor that. And
Do you see an overall reduction, Jimbo?
yes, I have. One of the things that I never, and for whatever reason, I keep looking at all these water usage numbers, gallon wise. And I never looked at the water bill itself. And it appears the water bill is running around $200 a month on the building. Now the building has 2 meters. That's the north meter. The south meter, we got a new meter installed in it here maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. It never got a new meter on the other end. And so it's just now starting to read. I'm trying to remember, I had just talked to Karen about this, and it appears the south meter is running like 30 gallons a day. Of course, there's a lavatory in both bathrooms. We have 2 commodes and a urinal and a sink in the kitchen area. The other end, I want to think, gosh, I just can't remember what she told me that meter was running a day. It was over 100 gallons a day, I know that. 120 maybe, something like that. But it appears it appears the usage has gone down. We worked on some clothes, we worked on several different things, along with the leak at the meter. So, I'm hoping
Comparatively,
that's corrected.
just looking at the north and the south end, does it make sense that the north end should be using so much more?
Yes, because that north meter, it's metered probably 3/4 of that building.
Okay.
One of the things we did find out, which we didn't realize, is that north meter actually controls suite 2. And that's, that crossway in the building, you got that cross hall from front to back of the building. Okay, suite 2 would be the one towards the north.
Okay.
Now, of course, they don't have a lavatory, sink. I think there was a kitchen area in there at one time or something. So there's a sink there that they use. So they're certainly, I wouldn't think they would be using very much, but we did figure that part out when we were messing with all this.
Okay, Jimbo, are those new meters?
The new meter, yes.
I didn't realize it till the other day, but I had a leak. I couldn't find it nowhere. But I called you on plumbing over there.
Right.
And the guy, it's got an active flow meter on it, right?
Oh, yeah. No, they
And
did.
he isolated everything off in that house and found where that leak was with that flow meter on that.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Got it to 0. So I mean,
What was it? Do you know?
my toilet float wasn't going all the way up.
I'll be dang.
Yeah.
Yeah, they replaced that and it went to 0.
They are very, very sensitive.
Yeah, they do.
Since I've been involved in this, I've learned more than I really wanted to. It'll tell you minute, hour. I mean, it's got, matter of fact, there's even functions that it has that we don't use here in the city. So, yeah, they're very, matter of fact, the meter, well, let me just keep going, then we'll get on that in a minute. Okay, so we'll talk about that here in just a second. Nautical Lanes Marina, of course, Horizon has been there 16 times since the last PC meeting. The water usage, I thought we had it under control, and all of a sudden it spiked again. And it didn't spike a little bit, it spiked a lot. And I got Karen to print some stuff off for me this morning, and I don't know, it's kind of small, so I don't know if I'm gonna be able to read this exactly. But on the, what day is this one? Some of this stuff is pretty small.
You know where it's coming from?
No. Oh, where's it coming? Yeah, no. But there was one day in here where this thing spiked like 3,000 in one setting, and then another 2,000 in another setting, and then it just almost shuts off completely. And I really don't know. I have no idea. I have one more thing I was gonna try. and I don't know. We had, for some reason, I got a phone call from somebody, hey, y'all have a urinal running in the park. And so I called Eddie, Tyler, I said, hey, y'all got a urinal that's just running. He said, yeah, we're already on it. I'm wondering if some of that is tied into that meter.
It shouldn't be.
Well, I know it shouldn't be, but you know, there's two separate, there's two different, if I remember, isn't there two separate bathrooms down there, kind of an old part and a new part? Well, I wonder if that old part is tied, because there's another meter there. If the old part is tied to this tied into this meter, I don't know. I haven't got down there. I wanted to shut it off for about 3 or 4 days and
Can you just close like one restroom, close it off? And
I'm just gonna
One of them
close,
is closed off.
I'm gonna close the meter. I'm just gonna shut the meter off to the marina and see.
Yeah, and
We
see,
get,
we talked about that, see.
yeah. I mean, that's
That'd be simple enough to do, Jim. You cut off the meter and drive down to the bathrooms and the water fountains, because there's water fountains out there. There's water at the covered pavilion. There's water at the bathrooms. There's water at the clean out. I mean,
Tell really quick if it's running there.
We have caught people stealing water down in that, in that park area before.
you got that water pad down there too?
The water pad too, yeah. I don't think it's turned on.
That's not functioning right now.
Okay.
But,
Well,
I just don't see anybody, and I told, we got the one little board there, Percy, I told him, I said, look, you need to keep an eye on this. You're here, 24/7. I said, you find somebody, these numbers are almost like, certainly there's not a boat down there that'll hold 3,000 or 5,000 gallons of water.
Somebody turned off the
And
faucet.
I told him, I said, if you see something running, this is almost like somebody just turned it on and just kind of for maintenance type deal. And,
There's nobody running the AC through there?
so,
I
I've been
don't-
watching that one real close, real close. So I don't know, but I can tell you this, and I think we may have talked about it at the last meeting, we did install a new meter because where that meter is, there's a backflow preventer there, and there's a ball valve, 2-inch ball valve on either side of it, and plus the valve where you can actually turn the water flow off to the meter. All three of those valves are turned off. We're still getting the leak. And what was really strange, we were getting a backflow. Figure that one out.
Through the backflow?
Yes, well, no, backflow through the meter. And instead of you seeing these graphs going up, they were all going down. And so we did put a new meter in, and that's been maybe a month ago, maybe 5 weeks ago. So yeah, those meters are very, very sensitive.
Jimbo, thank you for paying attention to this.
I know.
We've been talking about this for 2 years.
I've been spending a lot of time.
How many gallons of water?
I just don't know.
Thousands of dollars.
One thing I found out recently by reading a report is that Port Lavaca has a seawall. I didn't know that. So maybe the seawall screwed it up. The seawall was built in 1920. So, maybe and it goes right there. I did not know that Port Lavaca had a seawall. All y'all know that, but I didn't know that.
So anyway, yeah, we'll continue to monitor that. And I am gonna turn it off and, kind of go that route, see if by chance. And I will tell you this as well. What was really interesting about this is when I got the phone call about the urinal just running, I went to Karen and had her look this up, and it was during that same time frame. Now, whether it's coincidental, I can't tell you that, but we will find out. We will, continue on top of this and Cliff Harbor, really no updates there. Harbor Refuge, Rexco's they've been moving mulch. I talked to Kevin yesterday and they're still moving it. I thought they might be finished, but they're still moving the mulch. We did have a meeting at Encore on the 31st of January to get a process in place to track the dockage use. And so Chipper Dow there every Friday, he sends me a list of equipment, days, this type of thing, of their docket use, and then at the end of the month, you know, Hillary's, she's putting it all together, and then she'll send us the final tally at the end of the month, and then we will build them off of what she comes up with, so.
They're getting a lot of use out of it. They ought to just rent the thing.
Well, that's kind of what I thought. I mentioned it, but I don't know. Well, you know, they're working, they got
Well,
the
but
dredge.
that's the public dock.
That's right.
Right.
And it's used for those
Yeah.
fertilizer barges too. I'm not fertilizer, but crude oil.
Well, I mean, so,
Isn't that right, Jimbo? They're using the same dock.
yeah, but they don't hang back, they hang further back towards Helena than they do.
Yeah, okay,
back,
But regardless, it's still the public dock.
right.
But they're using Helena's, with Helena's permission or just doing it.
Yeah, they, you know, well, the problem with all that is where that crude oil header comes out on that bulkhead, they're not in line with their property.
Right.
You know, it's,
Yeah.
it's further to the east,
Yes.
so they're hanging further over onto Helena, so.
So when they're sitting there, you can't load a crude oil barge.
But they, you know, they've done a pretty good job of
Yeah.
working things out.
Yes.
Amongst them down there, so.
And we
everything's awesome.
and we heard from Jim, we heard from Chipper about the employee parking and their usage of that 100 foot of.
But we talked about that too. Matter of fact, this meeting that we had, that was part of the discussion. And, you know, they were parking back on track 3. What is it, track 2? They were parking there. I don't know how all of a sudden we're back on that. What is that, track 4?
No, that's the public dock.
Public dock, they've got equipment stacked up there, and hell, this week I went out there, there's probably 20 cars.
Yeah.
And
No, we've
you
already
can tell
talked-
they've done it for a while because there ain't no grass.
That's their dredge that's working out there, I think, and that's where they put the
why there's
crews.
So much activity because they started at Port south, so they're working off, you know, out of this.
Did Chipper give us any indication that they would want to use that, you know, that they would actually be parking their cars there, or they just did it?
Well, they were supposed to be, our meeting that we had, we talked about this, and which we'd already talked about. You know, this, you know, of course, it already had come up about the boat ramp, public boat ramp deal. And so this came up as well in the meeting, and of course, Hillary, you know, everybody was on the same page, they were gonna park on their leased property. So I don't know how everything changed from that point, but he did get a phone call yesterday, so.
Well, you know, that's illegal. I said they're illegally parked.
Well, they were on the public dock.
Yes, and then that's illegal, for them to park there.
And
So, and almost like, yeah, if they will continue to work with us and get that stuff taken care of and get on their own property.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm guessing it was a miscommunication with the employees.
I think what happened, yeah, I think that's exactly what happens, you know. You know, these guys come on and they say, well, we're just gonna park here, right? And
One
then.
guy does it and everybody
And
does
everybody
it.
follows suit. I think that's what probably happens.
Well, they've got a back gate on 3 where they can come across the public dock.
And I
They Park inside their area.
I did get a contact, email, phone number and name for the people that own, where the parking lot is by the boat ramp. So I'm working with her to first, you know, determine whether in fact there is some long lost lease for that area, and if not, can we develop a new lease or can we purchase that property? And so, I got that in the works.
So, yeah, and that's, you know, if you go down there and look, Joe and I have had this discussion at that area. You know, typically they put power poles and stuff on property lines, right? And if you look at that, if we lose that property, it's not gonna give us much
We
room
won't have any.
to park a trailer there. You know,
Yeah, not good.
and I don't know, I know she's put a lot of effort towards trying to figure it out, but obviously something happened at some point because there's, you know, there's that set of posts with the cable running through it around there, so.
We just don't know that there's anything in writing.
Yeah.
So we need to.
Does the property owner acknowledge that cable was put there when she owned the property?
No, she's looking into it. I mean, she's
Okay.
barely still trying to see the property, and they own property all over the United States, so she's trying to find this.
See, I think that property, we had this discussion too, that property all used to belong to Dr. Reamer.
Mm.
And then, you know, later on it was sold to the, if I got this right, the bunch that has the
It's
tower, right?
SBS, it's SBS Steel Communications or
Yeah.
something.
We really ought to try to purchase that.
Yeah, and that's what I'm, it's
Now,
a
if we-
slow process, but yeah, that's what we're.
So if we want to purchase it, what is going to be the purpose behind the purchase?
You can't
You
do nothing.
won't be able to park
If-
trailers.
If that property changes hands,
So it'd be for public use.
yeah, that's the boat ramp
That's what
would
we
be.
should move in a rabbit hole where we
I mean,
where we're, I'd have a pushback if we're providing free parking for commercial enterprises.
Right.
Because if we're gonna start doing that, then I'm gonna come to the city and say, hey, look, my employees, I don't want them parking in my parking lot.
Yeah.
And so I need the city to provide me, a private business owner, with parking for my employees. That's a very slippery slope.
yeah,
And
currently
so-
we don't know that.
I don't think
people are
we've,
encroaching on private property.
I think the intent is to do exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
We ran into this issue when the dredge out there from
A
Louisiana,
lot.
they were all,
Why not?
Yeah.
yeah, they were all Mike Hooks. They were
Mike Hooks, yeah.
parking the whole daggone thing.
Yeah,
And then we found out, well, we don't even own the property.
I remember that, yeah.
And-
As long as we're on the same page, we're not gonna provide free parking,
Right.
For
Commercial entities.
commercial
Yeah.
entities.
period. It's public use.
Mhm.
Boat training. And if you don't get a phone call like I do every single time it's blocked, you're blocked again. I said, okay, I'll say something. So,
The real problem is gonna come is if she sells that to somebody else
oh,
and the somebody says, you ain't getting on them as property.
but we can condemn it. I mean, obviously, this takes a long time to do.
It's just been behind that fence for.
Eminent domain.
Yeah, we want to, but we want to,
What?
we don't want to go that route, but yeah, I think we'll work something out. It's just gonna take a while to do.
You need a good negotiator.
Well, get him on the phone. They've got to find the property first, but we're working on it.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, of course, they're still hauling some dirt. There's, matter of fact, there's a lot of material down there, a lot of dirt that I need to get back on, but you know, the weather's not been real conducive to be.
Too slushy right
Yeah,
now.
so, we hadn't got back on that. And you asked a question earlier, or somebody did about Gonzalez and the $5,000
Yeah.
insurance.
Mhm.
I think what that was, it was like $4,800 or something, I think. And that was for the material at Smith Farm is what that was.
Smith Harbor continues to need help, though. It's a bare minimum there.
Well, I actually hadn't.
Weather gets a little better.
Yeah, but we're going, and it's pretty dry down there now, the material we brought in, because there was two big mud holes there that we just dumped material into. And it was pretty slushy, and when they brought that maintainer down there, they about got stuck. And so at some point we'll get, I mean, it's plenty good to drive on now, but at some point we'll get that maintainer.
We
back
need,
in
we
there.
need to do something over there by Poor Boys also, that area where they turn around, they go down there, buy the bait
Right.
or bring their boat, and when they go to leave, that's starting to get pretty messy over there. You might look at that.
Well, I know he doesn't have any material right now because,
Hey, you want some material? Send them to my front yard. I got a whole bunch of caliche over there that I'd like to get rid of.
really?
No
Okay.
kidding.
Okay.
There's a lot of it.
Well, I know,
They're gonna-
this,
You'd have to dig it up and put it in the trunk, but
all this material came from, the parking lot at the high school is where this came from. I think that's all shell.
well, you can come get some good caliche out of my front yard.
All right, go ahead.
And of course, we control, but I just leave it on there. I don't know, do we have a copy of Randy's list here or? somewhere? Maybe?
Yeah, it's right behind that.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Showtime. Mr. Butler,
Aurelia's been
to-do list.
really doing a beautiful job keeping this up. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I appreciate it. So this, This is the latest one, right, Aurelia?
Yes, sir.
I took some items off that we'd already completed, and this was what's remaining. I'll let y'all look at that, but while I'm at it here, for today's meeting, we're gonna ask Gulf Mark about the business downturn. We're gonna ask Derek about removing those old barges when he comes in here to do the other work. And then the last thing I had was Nautical Landings Marina, that mysterious third water meter. We're still working on that. And that's all I captured for today.
You know, can I say something? And I meant to say this earlier when we were talking. Okay, so if we get to a point and that marina is using, that water usage is coming from the marina, I kind of briefly talked to Jody about this. Maybe everybody's gonna start paying like a 20
Surcharge.
per month,
Yeah, I
you
mean,
know?
and
I mean,
we,
to overcome some of this. I don't
right, we can do that. I mean, remember, if you recall, the reason why we had addressed the fees or the boat slip fees in recent years was because we were waiting on the breakwater to get fixed. But if we identify something specific or we need to add, water use surcharge or something, I mean, we can do that and we don't have to wait on anything for that, yeah.
I'd be more in line to add 20 cents a foot rather than trying to bird dog the water bill.
Or we could get,
We haven't looked at it in a long time because of the bulkhead. But once that breakwater gets
I mean,
lifted,
once that gets done, we can then
Well,
address this.
yeah.
I'm all for capturing a cost to the city, but this all could be coming from city material, city function items like restrooms and other things that we just
Now,
haven't.
if in fact we find that to be so, then we'll have to look at it
Yeah,
and figure out
right.
some swap of funds, yeah.
Okay,
Did y'all run that to ground on that light meter on down in City Harbor? Y'all were going to meet with AEP and stuff and figure out who that post belonged to and did it need to
Oh,
be
Jody
there?
worked on that. Remember the one that Smith Harbor? Remember you sent?
Oh, yeah. That was a meter loop.
Oh, yeah,
Remember you said
I have
that?
not heard back from.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, I reached out to AEP, she was looking into it, but I have not heard back. from
My
her.
guess is Ms. Carvalho's put that in.
But, I mean, the one pole, I'm not sure which one you're talking about, one pole, that serves, that's what
I know.
AEP came down and used to serve the building.
The one we're talking about is a isolated meter loop. Looks like it's brand new. And I'll bet you $50 that she put that in when we started talking about putting her boat in there. And she wanted a spot right there. I
But
bet
it's
you.
not hooked up or anything.
No.
No.
Yeah, anyway, I haven't heard back, but I'll check back.
Well, I wouldn't think, look like the email you sent, I wouldn't think they'd would they have an easement through right
Well,
behind that bulkhead?
They've got to, or either they need one because they have provided service from that line. They can't have
Right.
electricity on private property served.
Right.
So
right.
that's what I'm trying to figure out, okay. Why do
AEP,
you guys have this line here that?
and that's AEP.
Yeah,
right.
that's AEP.
Okay.
All right.
I have y'all want to go over the rest of these real quick? The first three items, I think we've been talking about that half the meeting this morning. We're still trying to figure out what's going on with those water meters. Jimbo.
Yeah.
And item 4, Rob, Mike, and myself met with Tim Dent. We did have that meeting, and I don't know if we want to discuss that now or not.
It's only a good item today.
Oh, okay, it's there. All right, good. Let's see, number 5. We need to talk about the tariff issue, right, before we do any of this. Those slip rental payments relative to City Harbor and Harbor Refuge, those are the 2 Miller, the leases that are upcoming. There's some questions that we'll have to discuss, but that'll happen when we hold the tariff meeting. Alongside mooring spots, we talked about that. We're not gonna do that out there on the active
Yeah, we're not.
channel. We don't want
that's not
anything out there.
Until you guys say otherwise.
So I'm gonna take that off. And then finally, Mike and I met with Paul Spaeth. Oh gosh,
That's on the agenda as well.
okay, good. We can tell you what happened there. Let's see, review present findings. Tariff lease wording and plans going forward. Does that make sense to y'all?
Yeah, but we're gonna wait till after we have collectively agreed on the tariff and then we're gonna sit down.
Okay. All right, so that's a holdover. And these are holdover items. The Orion Basin City Harbor regarding purchase, we can probably take that off. That's for later consideration for property that the city might want to purchase. I'm gonna add another item that Harbor of Refuge boat ramp parking issue. Okay, and the floating dredge pipe is gone now. But we need to be mindful of how we handle that in the future.
The harbor, as you saw, was blocked
It
for
was
several days.
the whole south bank. There was, I don't know, 1,500 feet of piping and there was like 5.
But it blocked the harbor.
It did. Well, it blocked the use of that whole bank. They're taking up water space, guys. It's.
No, I didn't never did go down there and look at
See, I
it.
think they paid, I think we invoiced them like $2,700.
Last, or January,
Yeah.
Okay, as long as y'all are mindful of that happening and,
it'll show up in.
okay. Well, that's floating acreage that the city needs to be paid for. That's it.
All right, move on then to agenda item 6, discuss the status report from the Turf Development Committee. Jody?
I just put this on here in case anybody had anything new to add right now. I know like you talked about, well, I think what we discussed last time is kind of wait for like the joint meeting, some of the stuff we'll be talking about. And we'll bring it back. And once the Port Commission collectively is in agreement with our draft, then Raymond and I will sit down with that attorney and.
One of the questions would be, Jody, it should be put our parking stuff in there.
We can put whatever we.
Maybe a good place to put it.
in there.
Hey, we don't allow parking. And I just, on our commercial parking on any place that's at least something that gets to go in there, and that's this tariff place document would be a good place for it.
Okay.
I don't want to write it, but that's the way it all.
I'll put something in.
Okay.
So the significance of the highlighted material is on page 4, there's highlighted, and there's a lot of highlighted material on page 10. That's what we all decided.
Wait, where are you at?
I'm in the tariff circular.
Oh, yeah. I think those were the highlighted things to pay attention to that we made is out what we want,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're done relative to our meeting that we had. You asked me about yesterday.
Oh. Okay.
That will be addressed at our later meeting. You right? Okay, Rob?
Yeah, but we're gonna talk about that at the next agenda item.
Oh, okay, excuse me. I'm
Move
sorry.
on then to agenda item 7. Your report from select committee on the possible topics to discuss with the city council on February the 25th joint workshop, including possible change to Port Commission and review of the 2023 Valvage appraisal reports.
Yeah, just a reminder, there is a scheduled joint workshop with city council next Tuesday,
Was it Tuesday?
25th, beginning at 5:30 in Otter Planning's Marina meeting. The one topic will be the review of the Valvage valuations and how to use these valuations moving forward in negotiating new leases. Just for information or to keep this in our mind as we're looking forward to this meeting. The 2 upcoming new leases that we have to negotiate in 2025 would be the City Harbor Track 3, 4, 5, 6, 12, which is Miller Seafood. It expires July 1st of 2025. And then the Harbor of Refuge Tracks 3 and 11, which is currently on for dredging, which expires November 30th of 2025. Just for information, I put in here, in the memo, just the expiration dates of other leases. That, assuming available extensions are exercised. And you can see most of them are quite a ways off. City Harbor Track 10 is not till February 28th, 2029. Track 99A is not till August 31st, 2029. Equalizer isn't until December 31st, 2030. Prestige is not until March 30th of 2021. And Helena is just after my 100th birthday. Yay.
You're still gonna be around. You're gonna make that meeting.
The City Harbor Track 7, 8, and 11, which is a federation, is currently on a month-to-month at this time. And then the Cable One, actually, that's not City Harbor, that's Harbor Refuge. That mirrors the cable franchise agreement, so that's ongoing. The available tracks that we currently do not lease or do not have an active lease on is obviously the landfill track, which potentially there's some 4 acres there that once we get that all cleaned up, that potentially could be leased for certain things depending on approved for TCQ. And then track 14, which is approximately a 6-acre tract, which is kind of like catty corner across the street from Helena. Now the Nautical Lands building, we don't have any new leases to negotiate in 2025 for that office building unless, of course, somebody does not exercise or the commission does not approve an available extension. I did send you separately a copy of the rental rate comparison sheets for all the currently used tracks that I've shared also with council. That can help in the discussion Tuesday night. I know a second topic is to be general discussion of the role of the Port Commission. I know my understanding is Robert Knox and some others have kind of been working on that, hoping we can kind of have a general discussion of that now before we do that Tuesday night.
The only remark I have on this is it a joint workshop or a joint special meeting?
Joint workshop.
There'll be nothing taking place.
I mean, no action taken, correct?
City council gonna be there or
Yes, it's a joint workshop.
workshop? Okay.
There's no
It'll
action.
be a called meeting, but no action taken.
That's what, the city council wants a workshop.
All right?
Yeah.
So going into that workshop, probably now's a good time to discuss. Is there anything that my fellow commissioners want to have in that part of that workshop as part of, what I look at as more of a brainstorming session to kind of figure out, what we'd like to see collectively from Port Resources. Because I think when we have this meeting, we're kind of looking at where we're at, and I'm the new guy in town. So, and we're looking at where we were, where we are and where we're going. I started looking at a couple of different things and I'm going, okay, there's some history and we'll talk about the history, but my opinion, this is just my opinion, is that some big decisions have to be made about where we see ourselves going forward. And basically, I think it's important that we generate some form of business plan collectively with council so that we all know, we all agree collectively that we're going to work in one direction. And that became very apparent to me with the recent interaction we've had with Encore. And the dispute over leases and valuations and everything else. Because as an outsider looking in, is that we oversee a significant amount of resources. And we're looking at tens of millions of dollars worth of assets. And so you're looking at, as last fiscal year, we did about $1 million revenues coming into this. And so what I see is that as we've made a lot of progress towards formalizing some of our operations and putting systems in place and looking at implementing specific methodologies to defend our position and taking the emotion out of it and running it as best we can like a business, we as a commission have to decide, are we going to run it like a business? Or are we going to continue to kind of run it as a side hustle?
A part-time, just.
Yeah.
Part-time.
And my opinion is that we need to make some progress on formalizing some of our operational activities so that as a commission, we know where we're going, but also too, is Jimbo is allow the people that we have running these assets. I mean, think about it. Jim's the guy, that's $1 million worth of revenue right there. I can imagine how overwhelmed he feels most days on this stuff. And so making sure that we collectively deploy the correct amount of resources to make sure that we're capitalizing on all the different opportunities that we have within the port. And making sure that we kind of bring that stuff up to where it needs to be right now. And so I Jody sent me over the job descriptions and has anybody ever just seen the job descriptions on these things? I think we need to look at those things, bring them up to date and everything. Because if you look at the, like for instance, the harbor master's job description, it's more of a maintenance kind of position. But then you kind of throw in, oh, by the way, he participates in marketing and stuff like that. And so I think we need to more formalize these activities so that we can build in systems that we have a better system of accountability, but also too, is that we're presenting a more united front and deploying the necessary resources to get the return on investments that we need. Because again, we have a couple of I would say big fights ahead of us, I believe. I've already been called on the Encore stuff by folks, and so I know what lies ahead. And so we're going to have to make those decisions. And so now's an opportunity that if somebody has a wish list, I think these are some of the things that we haven't had and that we need. I would like that feedback so that when we're having this workshop, we can kind of lay it all out there and say, here's the way we think it should run. And here's the things that we need. We need standard operating procedures for these functions. We need to know that who's capturing our revenue out there and where they're capturing it. How many times do we have someone on the port's payroll that's going out there and counting boats, and making sure things are being reported back, and what that looks like. And again, because we're overseeing a significant amount of resources, is making sure that as we're good stewards of these resources, that we're actually charging enough to be able to have money to reinvest in those assets. And so again, and formalizing what those benchmarks look like collectively. So if y'all have something y'all want to put on the list, I'm putting together thoughts about it so that we can, as a council and commission, come together and figure out what this looks like going forward.
So did you get called about Encore to reduce the rates or not increase them as much or?
To pressure to give them whatever they want.
Oh, okay.
Kind of stuff, and so part of this business plan needs to be, my opinion again, is how do we formalize the operational activities of what we're doing, but also too is how do we more formalize the marketing aspects of marketing these assets, because one of the pushbacks with Encore was that if we pull out, nobody's going to want it. To which the person that I was on the phone with, I said, well, I said, you're kind of right. I said, but historically, it's been the best metaphor I can use for that is a guy decides to sell his house. Larry decides to sell his house. And Larry told me, hey, he decided to sell his house. I'm going to sell my house, Robert. 3 months into it, Larry and I talk, and Larry goes, man, we got no offers on our house. But Larry never put a for sale sign in front of his house. He and I are the only people that knew it was for sale, you know? And so part of this is going to be working on having a plan for how to market these assets, whether we work on a state with you know, on a statewide basis, regional basis, incorporate Chamber of Commerce stuff and things like that. And we could focus on the commercial side of it, but also too, there's got to be a component that focuses on the tourism side of it on these assets with the recreational use of stuff that we oversee. We don't have that.
Well, but I do want to point out, we want to be careful. Don't want to be actively marketing areas that we have a long-term lease on.
No, you know, but we can provide general marketing material that says, because you never know when a tenant's gonna leave. You never know when a tenant's gonna go bankrupt, you know, so my recommendation is that you always have your assets sitting out there so that people know that you're in the business to conduct business and not just taking what comes your way, especially given the increased activity from an industrial standpoint, just in our immediate market area. And we really don't have anybody that's marketing our assets. I mean, city's part of the VDC, but you know, my pushback there is like, it leads with Victoria. You know, I love Giannis, but you know, it leads with Victoria. So there's some things that we can do internally that can give us a better face, would actually build into tourism, because we have a lot, you know, we oversee some boat ramps. We have some areas that way that will benefit local businesses, but also too being cognizant of the industrial side of what we do and not continue to, just hate to say it, just give it away because we're just kind of happy, you know, and we're scared that of the overall proposed adverse economic impact that someone leaving might have to our area. It was my pushback to this gentleman was, what makes you an economic impact expert? You know, and so anyway, that's just my thoughts. Would love to hear other thoughts, and you know, that way we kind of communicate those and again, just brainstorm through those things to figure out where we're going to go.
Alex,
Go ahead.
I would like to piggyback real quick on what Rob is saying. I support that, everything that you said, and I have for a long time. I've spent 10 years or more working with every one of the Gulf Coast ports. There's 15 of them. And they're all in various phases of increasing their business tremendously. And it comes with a deepening and widening of their ship channels, every single one of them. We have that coming for Calhoun County. At some point, it's going to be here. I also spent probably 5 years contracting with the Port of Victoria. I'm doing consulting work with them. And I can tell you that the Port of Victoria has got an excellent executive director over there now. Very good. And if you will look at some of the things that have happened at the Port of Victoria, they could have very easily happened right here. There is no reason that they couldn't have. There are reasons that they should have, but the for sale sign wouldn't put up. And we have an ideal situation here relative to marketing our asset base. We've got a deep water channel that's a mile away from ours. Victoria didn't have that. We do. I think this may be the right time to be looking at this as Rob described. I support it. I think it's something that we should do for many, many reasons. We have just in the last 18 months to 2 years, through Jimbo's efforts and help, began to recover revenues from the Harbor of Refuge. And I'm comfortable we're on the way to capturing a lot more. We're not marketing any of that down there actively. So I think the time is right for us to start considering our asset base here from a business point of view. I think we have a responsibility to do that for the city of Port Lavaca. We all bring various personal expertise to this committee. And we should be using that for the benefit of the city of Port Lavaca. And if they take it, great. If they don't, we tried. So I'm totally behind us looking at this.
Yes, sir.
So I agree. I mean, I think that my only issue is I don't want to price things as if we have this deeper, wider channel before we get the deeper, wider channel. And I wonder how valid the Bow Bridge report was, because we got it, did it. I'm not saying it's bad, but some of it seemed out of whack to me. And so are we going to base our fees on this report that we know parts of it are flawed, at least it's appear to be? And, is that what we're willing to do today? I mean, because we want to do something and the council wants to be, and, the council has to deal with democracy. None of us are elected, we're all appointed. And so I think realizing their pressure, on us. I mean, what do they want us to do? And I want us to get organized more so. That'd be great. And a standard operating procedure, I think that's a good idea. And I just see us as, I talked to a friend of mine in the Corps a couple of weeks ago and asked him what he thought, the Corps in Galveston, what he thought. And he said there was good news, but it wasn't going to be quick. I mean, and so I mean, it looks like it's going to happen, but I don't know, he wouldn't, and he's been there a day or two. And so, I mean, he's been there a long time. And so anyway, he's seen a lot of things. And so I don't know. I mean, I just don't want to process higher as if we have this deep water channel. We don't. I mean, we do have it, but we don't have it as deep and wide.
I wasn't here when the Valbridge report came in, but we keep coming back to this Valbridge report. And so I would, I tend to trust whoever hired them, because I'm sure that when this was put out, I'm sure there were different firms that you vetted, and they probably came in and said, this is why we're the best at valuing coastal assets. I would assume that, okay? And so they came back with their reports, and I would assume that inherent in their report, their valuations, was the fact that they didn't have a deeper water channel. Otherwise, probably the valuations would have come up significant more, okay? The concern I have when people look at a valuation and then they have a pushback on that valuation is, I don't mind anybody having pushback, but then I need to see the methodology behind the pushback other than an emotional knee-jerk reaction. Now, I deal with this every day in the insurance business because people come in and said, it's just too damn much, costing me too much. So it's my pushback is, Larry, what's an appropriate rate? And you tell me what your methodology is for that appropriate rate, because I know that when the company generated this rate, it was based on claims and exposure levels, a lot of scientific data that were in there. I know you don't like it, but there's a bona fide methodology. There's a science behind that, and so I think with the Valbridge stuff, it gets really emotional on those things. And I guess, and to piggyback on that is that, have we had any consultations from any commercial real estate brokers in the area that we've actually handed the report over to them and said, you give us your expert opinion, interpretations of these valuations? I haven't seen that occur. And my question is, why hasn't that occurred?
If I could just add this in the interest of expediency. we're talking about an issue, which is one amongst several that are involved in the overall view that we will have for this, we'll talk about. But that's just one thing. There are several others. And I tend to go along with what you said. I don't want to shove a number on anybody.
Yeah.
City.
For sure.
Or potential or existing tenants. I think there needs to be some give and take, some discussion about that before we come to that conclusion. All we're saying is there needs to be an overall arching view of this whole thing. And valuation of slip rentals is one of those. Valuation of leases is one of those. But let's don't get tangled up with trying to set those values in right now. Let's talk about the bigger picture of how we go about managing this whole, I would use the term port enterprise.
Yeah.
How we go about doing that. And let's get off on that track and see where it leads us. No foregone conclusions on Bridge's valuation at all.
What, Jody, I haven't read Bridge in a long time. I just remember that they use Corpus as a key comparison. And we are not Corpus, and we are never going to be Corpus. And so to me, it's like, you know, I mean, I want to know, they didn't look at Palacios. They didn't look at, I mean, they use Corpus. And so to me, you know, for us to compare our resources with Corpus's resources, or, I mean, that's kind of rough today. I mean, maybe 20 years from now, Callahan will be booming, and our comparison to Corpus would be reasonable. But I don't know. That's what bothered me about the Bridge report.
Good point.
The only question, the only issue, Bridge is a recognized appraiser of coastal property.
Right.
And they have been working the entire coast for years. And so I look at it and I was surprised at the size of the increase. But what they're telling us, that's a market rate. And if we don't like it, let's go get another appraiser. We certainly do not have the skill set in here to do any appraisals at all, none, zero.
Yep.
Right.
So first thing, if they don't like it, let's go back to Bridge. Say we want to do it. It's been 2.5 years. We'll do it again. Either use them or another alternative. I did not find another alternative. We were looking.
No, and I think it was excellent to actually get a set of data. We didn't have it until we looked
They
at.
said it. That is the market value that they perceived from 2 years ago. And we're using that to set our rates. How would we justify changing from Bridge? What's the justification? Other than the fact, I don't believe
I
Bridge.
want to change from them, but I want to know that the comparisons of ports are not Corpus. That's like saying, let's compare us to Port of Houston.
Well, you have to assume though.
What does Houston have that we don't have? Many, many, many things. And so to me, I mean, goodness, I could say my house is worth just as much as the house of River Oaks. But there's not, you know, I'm not River Oaks, you know, and so to me, I think that bothered me when it was like Corpus, you know, I wanted to know what, and it was obviously convenient for them to compare to Corpus. Anyway, I'm
Their own valuation principles. I assume they know what they're doing. If we don't, we shouldn't have hired them.
Well,
And so therefore, I take their numbers as a market value of our property, which we ought to use 100% as the valuation for our rentals and leases. Otherwise, we're saying we know better than that. We do not.
You know, and I know what you're saying, Larry. I do. Because wife and I, we were driving down Magnolia Beach, you know, and looking at some of the dilapidated structures that are for sale. Okay. And you look over there, and I took, I said, what's the asking for that thing? She pulls up on the phone. She says, $340,000. Okay.
Oh, I know.
Like, I wouldn't give you $34,000 because you got a piece of crap on that side and a piece of crap on this side. Right. What's crazy is that it'll sell.
They're doing it.
And somebody will come in and build $1 million house on that thing. And that's just the market. I think what Valor's incorporates is that this is just the market that you're right. We don't have what Corpus has. We don't have what Houston has. But just the market in general, especially in the coastal areas, it's crazy, the valuations on these things, because it's waterfront and it's water
I
access.
sit on the ARB and that has happened
Yeah,
in
God,
spades the last 2 years.
yeah. And I mean, I'm just amazed at the amount of money that's getting spent, and then on the flip side, I understand what the replacement cost of it, because I just had $1.5 million structure burned down. I'm going, what kind of stuff? And so anyway, but
Well, let's go back to the Encore thing. We set the market rate. It was taken away from us by the council and renegotiated in council. And therefore, what does Encore look at? They look at that as a win. They say, well, we'll just leave if it just changed. Well, they found out maybe they don't want to leave. Don't know. So they went out and broadcast everybody in town. First National Bank meeting,
County commissioners.
Obviously council members complaining about that. And all we did was set it to a market rate, and they don't agree with that. Well, bring us, I understand them bringing us other that, but that's an example of us being a business, the port being a business. The port was a business, they would take responsibility for all of the above. And you wouldn't have an overriding council, which absolutely has the right. Resetting it because we'd reached an agreement. This is a business. We got business people on the board who understand business. And therefore, we ought to either listen to them or get rid of them. One of the two. The in-between, this randomness is just crazy. For us personally, it's crazy. So I think organizing as some kind of structured environment is where we ought to go. And I think council understands that, we're citizens like they are. They're elected. They have the ultimate power, but they've got these great individuals that you couldn't find anywhere else. They're doing this work. Let's trust them and let them go. And that's really, that's where I want to be, is that we have that kind of structure where we argue these things out in here and then make a decision, get data like we do from Valbridge or whoever about our property values and use that sort of thing. And if we do it as a business, we could probably increase our revenue pretty dramatic over the next few years. I'll guarantee you the best condo building property is near my house on the gun range. I'll tell you what, 5-story condo would go in there in a lickety split minute and sell for, I guess if you had 880 rooms, that's what is that? $24 million of increased tax revenue. But there's no marketing development going into that. Well, we can look at that and say that somebody ought to be doing that for sure. And nobody's going to do it until we get a business view from the whole city or its assets that it owns. It would frighten me to death to try to build something here in town as a business. I'm through.
There's been some excellent discussion here, and sensitive discussion for the first time in a while. This council, this commission is an incredible business brain trust. We bring so much to the table. Not myself, but Robert, Mike, and y'all. But we operate from a business standpoint. I did not agree, as y'all well know, with the Valbridge report because honestly, I felt it was low. And I've used that $800 bulkhead versus the $4,000 a foot that we actually paid that day. Okay, so I don't have a lot of confidence, but it was the impetus to begin to move this forward. The difference is that We, as business people, do not operate like the council. They operate on warm fuzzies. Okay? I would ask that they allow us, because we do the legwork, we do the work. When we take them something, they need to accept it as face value, because as you notice, we discuss things. And when we come up with something, it's a pretty solid decision. We disagree, yes, we disagree. Okay? But ultimately, when we come together, we have done the legwork and the research. Okay, and for them to say, well, so-and-so doesn't like it and their neighbors are my cousin. I'm sorry. Okay, that undermines the effort and the time. And time, because our time is just as valuable as theirs, if not more. Okay? Jamie is always busy. We finagled it to where he could join us on a more regular basis. Now, he was acting like he was going to give it up one day. I did not want that. I value each and every one of these members. They're such an integral part. They make such a large contribution. We're going to have a pretty serious and hopefully open and animated discussion when we meet with council. I wish that some of these things that were said today were saved and present them to council so they'll understand where we're coming from. They're elected officials. They want to be elected. They want to be popular. We want us, this board commission, to be successful. Now, if Mike's suggestion about getting another appraisal, I don't know that I'm on board with that yet, because we don't have the improvement. I think we're spinning our wheels. But we had good information, not perfect, but we had the impetus. Thanks to Jimbo, we've almost doubled, if not tripled, our revenue from a few short years ago.
But can I say something?
It's your contribution has been immense.
Well, this is what I've been saying for 2 years, that we're to the point where we need to figure out what we're gonna do. Are we gonna stay just, are we gonna, what, I've been saying that for 2 years.
But everybody,
You know,
90% of the people are going to complain, oh, that's too high.
I understand.
And they go to Raymond all the time. Well, if I could sell it for that, but they sell it for that. If I could sell it, but they do. Okay, we have to be willing to face it and say, yes, this is what we got to have. And understand if you have to leave. We had that huge fight with Helena. Council undercut us. And Helena's going to be there till what is it?
58.
2058. We'll all be long gone and dead.
Birthday.
We'll all, I don't know, I may still be here. I look at my dad, I don't know, I may still be here. But appreciate y'all's contribution to this commission and continued effort. And don't let it erode. I know Mike blows up on me all the time. Don't let it erode you and your efforts.
Well, and
It's a huge business trust.
so the other thing I would just say is if I was a city council member, this is an advisory board. It is not a board that I can't, or that I have to agree to let them do whatever they want to do. And I'm going to kiss the crap. You're an advisory board, and I'm going to take your recommendation very seriously. I'm going to agree with 95% of them, which they have agreed with a bunch of our recommendations. But 5%, I'm going to reserve the right to say, no, we're not doing that. Not right now. We might do it 5 years from now I mean, to me, I think that's a fair position for a city council to take. If I went out and knocked on those doors, which I have done, and got elected, which I have done, then I would not delegate everything to an appointed board. And if they raised all kinds of hell for me, I just suck it up, big boy. I would not do it. I would say, I'm going to reserve some right myself to say yes or no. And so to me, I think it's good to have standard operating procedures. I agree. I think it's good to get more organized and get more revenue. I'm fine with that. If y'all say that we're, 50% under, I don't think we ought to go 50% right now. I think we ought to go 25 and 25 and wait till the thing gets closer, where the dredge is out there, then we can get to 50%. But anyway, that's just my opinion. And I do understand that I'm appointed. not elected. That's just my opinion.
We got pretty far off the track. If y'all have questions or comments, Robert Knox, opening cell
It
phone.
is to me, and I would encourage everyone to attend the workshop. The more people.
I think it's important we have 100% attendance.
Yes.
I will say this, though, from a special group we got together with Robert. We have delegated Robert to our primary spokesperson.
Right, I agree. I appreciate
And
that
so
so much.
therefore, if you have something to say, please say to Robert. Let him incorporate it, because otherwise the message gets very confusing.
All right,
All right.
let's move on then to agenda item 8. Here, report from Select Committee on the meeting with Calhoun County Chief Appraiser regarding property values for the city Port Harbor properties. Raymond Butler.
I just want to say one thing, and I'm gonna let Mike take this. But
Third works to say, go ahead.
pardon. Actually, Mike uncovered this, but we met with Paul Spade, who's our new chief appraiser after Jesse Hubble retired. And I've worked with Paul for probably the better part of 8 years as a member of the ARB. He is smart. He is sharp. The best one I have seen there. And we met with him with the objective of trying to make sure that the appraisal district is operating with not the full knowledge when they value city properties. That was our purpose for meeting with Paul Spade. And Paul right away said, hey, look, wait a minute, my hands are tied. The state law is that I must use the lease value of properties as their valuation number, period. Mike uncovered some information that says, basically, the state law says use the minimum value as being based on rental income. That number is the minimum he must value at. And I haven't had the conversation with Paul yet, but it's pretty clear to me that the law is intended to establish a minimum that the chief appraiser must use. And it can go up based on other input. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, Paul had it, it's a state law
State law. Yeah.
that he's using, which I read, and like I say, he was using the valuation for our rental properties as the stream of rental revenue. The sum of it would be the value. So if you had a $200,000 piece of property, and you were renting it for $20,000. His argument was that state law required him to value the property at $20,000. I read it, it's a minimum. It must be at least the minimum of $20,000. The valuation of the leasehold property is really $200K, and the taxes should be based on that. I still will need to have that discussion right with.
I shared that with Paul 2-3 days ago and haven't heard back from him. So
I think the real issue is the city-owned property is a special animal on the tax law, which you know, our school-owned property. And the real question is, how do you charge taxes on a piece of property that's owned by a city that's a tax exempt organization? And that was where he referred back to this rule. I think if we can get him convinced that's the minimum, then he will value it based on the property value, which would be, as the property would be $200K instead of 20. That's a dramatic difference in taxes to the city and to the taxpayer. I mean, it helps our overall deal. So for example, if you go out and look at Helena's taxable value is about $3 or $4 million. Because they put that building there. That is their building. They own the tanks there. So all that is taxed because it's their property, not ours. The property they're sitting on generates, I don't know what it, I don't know how much a month it generates, but it therefore almost no value for the property they're sitting on that the city owns. And my argument is, well, and realistically, the valuation of that should be set based on a commercial value. And right now, and that's not the way it's being done. There's not a single piece of city or school district or county property that's appraised that way.
You remember a few years ago, we kind of had this discussion. I spent about 4 days.
Yeah.
Figuring out how much it would cost to go, those tanks are all down.
Right, yes.
I handed it off. I don't know if there was anything.
They fortunately, I believe now included. It's slowly going up. So it started off, we were getting zero taxes on the building.
Right.
And then when we started questioning it, the city started questioning it, they went back and looked at it and then they put that in there. So now it's about $3-4 million. And probably if we were to get a third party appraised, we probably could find out it's really worth 8 or 9.
It probably worth, yeah.
But I think the discussion should continue. But it may take somebody, I don't know, maybe find a really good, I think he said, you can go talk to the comptroller's office. He said you'll find they're very uninformed because they don't allow you access to their real people. They have their support people, and you got tax problems. Yeah, I tell you what, you got to go talk to your local people.
Yeah.
I think
A good example of this just comes to my mind. The General Land Office years ago valued land for leases and easements at like $750
yes,
for a 10-year easement.
Right.
Jackson County, $750. And market value for those leases was going for order of magnitude difference, like $30,000 for a private easement to be granted. If it was a private industry doing that. And I pointed that out to them. This was back in 2016, 2017. And they said, whoa, we had no idea that those are the numbers. And they changed their way of doing business.
I'm hopeful that Paul will sit down and then I'm sure he will refer to his attorneys, whoever they are, and try to figure out what's the right answer. And then, he may, I gave it to you.
Let's you and I think you and I need to go back.
Yes.
And down with him.
Again.
Okay.
The thing we're trying to do is increase the revenue for the city and therefore the board commission. And if we could get all of our values in there at the value of the lease, that it's, what the rate is, then we will probably increase our tax revenue about 50%, which is another 50 grand. It's not trivial. It's not world clearing by any means, but it's not trivial. I think it's worth the effort. But again, you may get the kickback, Jody, from Mr. Paul or Mr. Aguirre the same way. You may get kickback from Paul. He said, what are you guys doing? And I hope you'll tell them we're working the problem, trying to get a solution which is good for the city. And if he shows me we're wrong, I'm going to throw my hands up, go away. I don't want to be fighting a position that's unwinnable. Therefore, we met.
Back on track. Two reports from Raymond Butler on property values for the city, port and harbor properties.
That just happened.
I think that's what we just did.
That's what we just did.
That was the report?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that was relative to our discussion with Paul Spade.
Yes.
And that's still in progress.
All right. I wasn't there. Was not aware of that.
We'll update you. if we
I
get it.
heard it, but if it didn't tie it together.
That's right.
With that being said, we have no reason to go into closed session. We'll go to agenda item number 11.
Wait a minute.
Agenda item number 11.
Comments from-
Comments from commissioners. Larry?
I think I've made my comment. Pretty clear. I'm good. I'm good. I just think we ought to be on our best behavior tonight.
Mr. Butler, additional.
Only thing I'll add is that I think we should be motivated by doing what we think collectively as being in the best interest of the city of Port Lavaca, period.
Jamie?
Well, from not having dealt with what you deal with in your business, or the knowledge that Raymond had, Mike, Larry, very interesting sitting here not knowing any of that stuff and listening to y'all talk. And I appreciate that. Appreciate that y'all pass that information between each other here. So I know the railroad stuff. I know petrochemical stuff. I don't know what y'all do. And it's very interesting on my part to listen to it and to hear y'all discuss it. And I appreciate it. That's it.
Thank you.
Robert?
I talked enough.
I'm saving my voice for Tuesday. I'm sure it's gonna be
Tracked everything I said because I've talked too much.
Well, again, thank you and we are very vocal, very animated and good discussion. Thank you so much. I'm open to hear a motion that we adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Nichols. Mr. Butler, that we adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Ah.
Opposed? All right. Again, thank you.